Good evening, Spirit and Truth, and happy Wednesday to everyone. Glad you're joining us tonight for our continued journey in Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth. We are in week 55. Can you believe that? It's been an amazing journey thus far. We do apologize for starting about 10 minutes late tonight. We've had some technical difficulty. Brandy's been running around our dining room where we record and using different cameras and having to try different Wi-Fi's. Technology is wonderful, and sometimes it chooses to misbehave. So appreciate your patience tonight. We're going to jump in pretty quickly tonight for the sake of time, because I want to get to some comments from a couple of weeks ago, and I appreciate you guys being patient with that. We went on a family vacation, and then we were in Tulsa last Wednesday night. We had some trouble with the Wi-Fi on vacation, and so we ran that again. And so appreciate your love and your patience as we live a balanced life. We're going to begin with our devotion tonight. We're in Fully Awake 365. Today is August the 23rd. And if you'd like to follow along with us, we're going to talk tonight about the certainty of uncertainty. That's relative to the whole month of August, talking about the beginner's mind, the certainty of uncertainty. Let's read our affirmation together tonight. Today, I am certain that certainty is uncertain. That's a tongue twister, isn't it? I will be flexible, malleable, versatile, agile, and mobile as I celebrate the certainty of uncertainty. What does that mean? Well, think about that in correspondence with the beginner's mind. The beginner's mind is all about celebrating the unknown, the new, the unfamiliar, the uncertainty, if you will. Business models shift. Our cheese gets moved. The stock market rises and falls. Relationships begin, shift, flourish, and then sometimes they end. If change is the only constant in the universe, shouldn't we be approaching life from uncertainty rather than certainty? Wow. When we get locked into a belief or business model, we become rigid and stagnant, unable to shift, unwilling to evolve, ill-equipped to adapt and incapacitated to adjust. So look down, if you will, at some of the beautiful certainties of uncertainty. It just says this: yet I perceive there to be some beautiful uncertainties of which we can be certain. Which or what is certain? Here's what is certain. I choose, or I will remain open. I will be flexible. I will always have available space for spirit to shift and shake anything that needs it. So I'm certain that I will continue to be open, flexible, malleable, uncertain, yielded to Spirit's moving, shaking, shifting me. If we need that, look down at the last paragraph. It just says, about 2 lines down, as we become comfortable in uncertainty. That's very much an antithesis of the religious, literalistic mind. It likes certainty. It likes to know. It likes to end. It likes the black and white, the absolute, the concrete level of, I was going to say conscious thinking, but I would call that unconscious thinking. Religion likes to know things, solid rocks, firm foundations, which really is very different from the spiritual approach to our practice. As we become comfortable in uncertainty, we will realize a powerful certainty of always being relevant and even revelatory wherever, whenever, however, whatever, and with whomever. That's a lot of flexibility there, isn't it? Yeah, the certainty of uncertainty. Let's read our prayer together at the end. It said, God who was and is to come. Today I give thanks for a progressive, organic, fresh revelation and revolution of approaching life from flexibility rather than rigidity. Isn't that a beautiful depiction of the God of the universe? God who was and is to come. The I am that I am. What does that mean from the Hebrew? It means I will be whatever I'm going to be. So even our approach to the mystery of the creative mind of the universe has to be with uncertainty, some level of beginner's mind that shows some respect for our approach to worship, to our spiritual practice with God, and to our own growth. All right. We're going to jump right in tonight. If you'd like to download the notes in your event description, you certainly can, or check those out. Follow along with us. We sent you an email today with some of the questions from a couple of weeks ago. We're going to try to really honor those who responded to those. Thank you for those who responded to the questions. They were tremendous as I was reading through them. So here are the questions it was actually from August 9th. From August 9th, we asked the question, number 1, what is a fragmented perception of the wholeness of life? Fragmented and wholeness. Those two ideas are in contradiction with each other. Number 2, how can we align ourselves with being conscious participants in the unfolding of our higher selves? How do I take place in my own evolution, in the unfoldment of my own soul? All right, number 3, in your own life, can you see how new life has grown or is growing out of the rotting and decaying matter? And so I'm gonna highlight just a few things from those who answered these questions. Miss LaSonia Watson, hello, Eye of Ra. She answered to us a question, or answering to question number 1. She referred to integrating the aspects, the disparate aspects in her own life more harmoniously, understanding that her well-being and academic growth are interconnected with performance as a remote worker. So kind of finding that life balance, the fragments of I'm a worker, I'm an academician, I'm all these things, my physical health. How do I work all of those things, my body, soul, and spirit together? That's really good. She answered number 2 and referred to the journey of the Israelites who had to learn to rely on an unfamiliar food substance. They called it manna, in the Hebrew man, which is translated in English as what is it? So the Israelites had to eat the mystery to walk into the promised land. That's the intersectionality of our spiritual journeys, in those liminal, transitional, connecting points. Sometimes it is unfamiliar, it is new. Even if you're familiar with Atlanta, many of the ways we connect to new highways is through a tunnel that becomes dark. Most things are gestated in the dark, and so learning to celebrate the uncertainty is a way to transition in our minds. Number 3, to the third question, she responded talking about the decaying matter of our lives producing new life. She said, I understand that life's challenges need to be confined to narrow definitions like good and bad. She was taking that as what is, not what should be. But embracing this mindset, I've thrived in unexpected ways, demonstrating that growth is boundless and we shed constricting identities. And so whether it's past struggles, future aspirations, learning that all of those seemingly fragmented plates and parcels of our lives really are all interconnected. They interbe with each other. And so thanks for sharing some wisdom with us. All right, Richard Copeland, to question number 1, he said, we normally believe only what we perceive with our senses. And so he's talking about the fragmentation of only allowing your spirit or your oversoul to connect with what you're hearing, seeing, smelling, touch, taste, with what those things can sense. This only limits what actually exists in the process of the changing natural evolution, even of the natural world. To number 2, question number 2, Richard said, we are much more than our content. Remember, content is things like our past, our memories, our accomplishments, our things, our possessions, our hurts, our failures, our successes. That's the content of our life. We are not the content. We are the divine observer of those things. Our sense of attainment, accomplishments, or thinking that we have arrived. That's beautiful, Richard, to the beginner's mind. Number 3, Richard talked about the natural evolutionary process of nature, and that without decaying matter, new life is not fertilized. How do we apply that to our own lives? The decaying matter of a past relationship maybe gives wisdom to the next. The decaying matter of old religious beliefs possibly opens us up to the fertilization of new spiritual ideas that we don't believe, but we consider. Learning not to hold beliefs, but to be the open channel through which considerations come to and through us. All right, thank you, Richard, for that. Pastor Frederick Hayes, hope you're feeling better. He was talking about getting a promotion several months ago, and said learning in this adjustment to this new promotion to let go of the outcome in dealing with different people's belief systems, managing people and not letting them control him or even controlling others, but just kind of learning to not approach something from success or failure, but just allowing it to be. To question number 2, Fred talked about his life journey, and seeing the decay. This is to number 3, Fred. Sorry. The decay of learning from mistakes of the past, the lessons that have changed the journey for positive, that our lives are not a manicured garden. Sometimes it is dirt, sometimes it's weeds, sometimes it looks unkempt, but when you step back from it, you can see a natural order and design of our evolution. All right, Miss Marjorie Jones. Hey, Margie Jones. She was talking about number 3. She said, while there may have been things that appeared like decomposition in the past, I now see it as something that might have looked like decay, but actually sets the stage for new life. Margie Joe said, not decaying, but transforming and finding new direction. I love that. And I love it that it's Margie Joe on there, not just Marjorie Jones. You're so cute with that. Just for short. Just for short. Margie Joe, that's so cute. All right, Miss Pat Hutchinson. Hey, Pat Hutchinson. She was responding, I think, to number 3, to our out of the rotting decay we sense new life. And she talked about a physical understanding of her own body and some changes in her own body that were a little bit unexpected. But she says she decided to allow this change to become a rebirth, to bring a fresh new perspective as a new person. And so, yeah, sometimes it's first the natural, then the spiritual. I love that connection there, Miss Pat. And then finally, Miss Bobby Moore Howard responded to 2 and 3, talked about being a conscious participant and the unfolding of her higher self requires just being present, being in the now moment, being self-actualized, self-aware. I love that, Bobby. To number 3, speaking of old experiences, she said, allow the old rotten experiences to help mold our future. In other words, gleaning wisdom from the past that we might carry into the future. What was dead can come alive in a more positive way when we learn from our past mistakes. Beautiful, Bobby. All right. Tonight's questions. Let me tell you the subject of tonight. We're going to talk about good and bad. I thought it was interesting because LaSonia Watson spoke in one of her answers about, she kind of alluded to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and good and bad. And LaSonia, that's literally what our next teaching was. So you were already a vibrational match for tonight's teaching. Tonight, we're going to talk about good and bad. Here are the questions that I sent out to you today and something to kind of bring us into our discussion. Question number 1. Is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil bigger than morality? Okay, is it just about right and wrong? Or are there other applications of this metaphor? And I do call it a metaphor. I don't think it was an actual tree. I think it's a metaphor for consciousness. Are there other applications to this metaphor? Is the tree of the knowledge of evil just about right and wrong, following the law, breaking the law, sin, righteousness? Or are there other applications to this metaphor in our spiritual journey? Question number 2. What is the higher order available to us in disorder? That's an interesting question. Is there a higher order that is available to us even in the midst of disorder? Question number 3. Is there a random event in your life that impacted the tapestry of the whole? So that's actually not all that different from question 3 from the previous teaching, talking about decaying matter producing new life in our experiences. And so it could be a random event that we may call disorder or chaotic. How has that impacted the tapestry of the whole experience of you becoming self-aware? Interesting question. All right, let's jump in to week 55, Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth. We're going to talk about good and bad tonight. At some point in their lives, most people become aware that there is not only birth, growth, success, good health, pleasure, and winning, but also loss, failure, sickness, old age, decay, pain, and death. Yeah, that is the balance of our material physical lives, even emotional lives. Conventionally, these are labeled good and bad, order and or disorder. The meaning of people's lives is usually associated with what they term good, but the good is continually threatened by collapse, breakdown, disorder, threatened by meaninglessness, and the bad when explanations fail and life ceases to make sense. So it's an interesting, there's an interesting Buddhist approach to this construct, and that is the Buddha teaches that when you don't have something, when you are in lack, you are always desiring something. And so you're never completely, truly present in the moment because you're always thinking of trying to get something or what you don't have. Conversely, Buddha teaches that if you have something, some possession, a relationship, money, house, love, joy, whatever, you're always fearful of losing the thing that you have. And so if you don't have something, I need to get it. When you get it, you're afraid of losing it. And so that is kind of the fragmentation of the tapestry of the whole taught from a Buddhist perspective. So in this first paragraph, we find a lot of talk about good and bad. And so in this framework, I want to ask you the question, which tree do you eat of? Do you eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? Or do you eat of the tree of life? And so here's just a little hint to question number one. There is an individual application to this, okay, both of our own life's journey. These were good experiences in my life. These were bad things that happened to me. Okay, that's a fragmentation of the tapestry of the whole. Okay, that's one application that's different from just right and wrong. But we also know an application of interfaith, or a religious application, that the tree of the knowledge of good and evil tries to tell us that some of the other trees are wrong, are bad. Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, whatever. So we choose from that metaphor not to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil from a religious narrative that tries to make us, cause us to make judgments about other religions. The tree of life says all of the trees in the garden are good to eat from. You may prefer a Christian tree. You may prefer a Buddhist or Islamic. You may prefer a cultural. You may prefer black culture, white culture, Southern, Northern, American, whatever. Yeah, all of us may have. You may prefer a different type of food than someone. It doesn't make something right or wrong. And so just because we have preferences or inclinations, or I would even say indoctrinations, my mother says people don't like what they know what they like. That's an interesting application to that. But in that divine observation, we can step back away from that tree of the knowledge of good and evil and say it's all good and it's all God, even if I have certain preferences, even if I go to church a certain way, to a certain rhythm or certain music or certain preaching style or whatever, or even a certain sanctuary that you may connect to. It's not about right and wrong. We don't eat of that tree. It's just it may be about personal preference. So there's some other applications to question number one. Sooner or later, disorder, as we continue, will erupt into everyone's life. No matter how many insurance policies he or she has. Jesus said this, it rains on the just and on the unjust. Wow. It may come in the form of loss or accident, sickness, disability, old age, death. However, the eruption of disorder into a person's life and the resultant collapse of a mentally defined meaning can become the opening into a higher order. So there's a little reference to question number two. So the disruptions, the eruptions, what we might see as the negative things or the disorderly, chaotic moments in our lives, they can open us into a higher order. What is that higher order that's available to us during chaos and order? Isn't that an interesting idea? So the higher order, give you a little spoiler alert here, the higher order is not just learning from the past, but stepping outside of that and saying, I am more than just wisdom. I am more than just some sort of knowledge that I've gained. I am not the wisdom. I am not the bad thing. I'm not the good thing. I am the divine observer of all of it. And in that divine observation, we don't get married to new wisdom. We also don't get married to personalizing everything that happens in our lives. Okay, it did not happen to me. It happened possibly through me, maybe even as me, and most of the time for me in some ways. And so in that perspective, as we step outside of the victim mentality, we can see that there is a higher order even in the chaotic moments of our life, even sometimes when we create the chaos ourselves. All right, let's keep coming. This world, the wisdom of this world is folly with God, says the Bible. What is the wisdom of this world? The movement of thought. Why do you think we just talked about just gleaning wisdom from a bad experience is not necessarily the higher order? Okay, that's kind of a stepping stone to the higher order. That's a good start, but sometimes you can get overly connected to the wisdom that you gain from some bad experience that causes you to be defensive, causes you to be over reactionary. It may cause you to be even overly skeptical of certain people or biased some way toward a culture or this or that. And so be cautious not to say that the higher order is just the wisdom that I glean from bad experiences. That's just a stepping stone. Don't get married to that wisdom. Why? You're not the wisdom that you gain from a bad experience or a fault or failure. You are the observer of the entire tapestry of the whole. Anybody feeling that? I know that's a lot of kind of quantum level of understanding right there. The movement of thought and meaning that is defined exclusively by thought. Thinking isolates a situation or event and calls it good or bad, as if it had a separate experience. Through excessive reliance on thinking, wisdom, knowledge, past, memories, reality becomes fragmented. This is a good thing that happened to me. I'm going to remember to do this all the time. That may not always work. This is a bad thing that happened to me. I'm never going to be around these type of people again, or choose. That may or may not be true. Okay, so you're not just the wisdom. That's a fragmentation of it. You're the observer of it. This fragmentation is an illusion, but it seems very real while you are trapped in it. And yet, the universe is an indivisible whole in which all things are interconnected, in which nothing exists in isolation. Whew, that's really good right there. That's some Thich Nhat Hanh interbeing right there. The deeper interconnectedness of all things and events implies that the mental labels of good and bad are ultimately illusory. Wow. Yeah, and so we choose, let's not eat of that tree. They always imply a limited perspective and so are true only relatively and temporarily. So think about the relative nature of assigning a temporary label to something bad that happened in your life. In the tapestry of the whole, you may look back and say, that may be the best thing that ever happened to me. That may be the most powerful thing that ever happened to or for me or through me. This is illustrated in the story. I love it. Listen to this story. This is so good. Illustrated in the story of a wise man who won an expensive car in a lottery. His family and friends were very happy for him and came to celebrate. "Isn't it great?" they said. "You are so lucky, so lucky." The man smiled and said, "Maybe." For a few weeks, he enjoyed driving the car. Then one day, a drunk driver crashed into his new car at an intersection, and he ended up in the hospital with multiple injuries. His family and friends came to see him and said, "That was truly unfortunate." Again, the man smiled and said, "Maybe." While he was still in the hospital one night, there was a landslide and his house fell into the sea. Again, his friends came the next day and said, "Weren't you lucky to have been in the hospital?" Again, he said, "Maybe." What a powerful lesson. I got some money. Isn't that wonderfully lucky? Maybe. I bought a new car. Isn't that great? Maybe. I crashed the new car and ended up in the hospital. That's so unfortunate. Maybe. While I was in the hospital, my house fell into the sea. Isn't that fortunate that you weren't in your house while you were in the hospital? Maybe. What a powerfully detached view from divine observation of our life's journey. The highs, the lows, the good, the bad. Yeah, it's all really relative, and it is temporary. And so the wise individual never really gets attached to any specific outcome. The wise man's maybe signifies a refusal to judge anything that happens. Instead of judging what is, He or she accepts it, and so enters into conscious alignment with the higher order. There's another answer to one of the questions. What is conscious alignment with the higher order? Accepting things as they are. It's very different from saying it is what it is. That is an acquiescent kind of a powerless helplessness that says, I can't do anything about the thing that is. It is what it is saying there's nothing I can do to change it. It is as it is saying I accept what is, and now in my acceptance, I can see it for what it is, and then possibly bring some sense of a shift or a paradigmatic perspective shift in the way that we see our lives. All right, keep coming. He knows that often it is impossible for the mind to understand what place or purpose a seemingly random event has in the tapestry of the whole. There's question number 3. Is there a random event in your life that impacted the tapestry of the whole? Beautiful. But there are no random events, nor are there events or things that exist by and for themselves in isolation. The atoms that make up your body were once forged inside stars. We're made of stardust. And the causes of even the smallest event are virtually infinite and connected with the whole in incomprehensible ways. If you wanted to trace back the cause of any event, you would have to go back all the way to the beginning of creation, not the biblical account. We know that in the beginning, the word there beginning in the Hebrew, Genesis 1 and verse 1, the word God created, that word is bara in the Hebrew, meaning not causing to exist, but reshaping existing matter, reshaping something that was already here, literally to cut away or carve away. Makes sense to me. The earth was without form, darkness, chaotic. So God didn't create necessarily the world in chaos. It existed in chaos. In the Genesis metaphor of creation, that word there is to reshape, to carve away, to kind of bring order into chaos, to bring design into disorder. And so, interesting take that Tolle has on the tapestry of the whole. If you wanted to trace back any event, I like it again, you would have to go back all the way to the beginning of creation. The cosmos is not chaotic. The very word cosmos means order. But this is not an order, this is not an order the human mind can even comprehend, although it can sometimes glimpse it. Wow. What a lot to chew on tonight. All right, I'm going to jump back and grab our 3 questions again for discussion tonight. Hopefully you're ready to talk tonight. Number 1, is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil bigger, is that metaphor bigger than just morality, sin, righteousness? Who determines what sin is? Is it the Mosaic law from Torah, as Christians call it, the Pentateuch? Or are there other applications to this metaphor bigger than just these moral codes of holiness, Levitical ideas? Are there different, maybe even higher applications to the metaphor of the tree of knowledge, bigger than just morality? Number 2, what is the higher order available to us in disorder? Okay, we talked about it's not just wisdom, but maybe something else to that. Number 3, is there a random event in your life that impacted the tapestry of the whole? Wow, that's a lot to think on tonight. All right, talk to me.
All right. Well, in response to number 1, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, is it bigger than morality? What are the other applications of this metaphor? Miss Laverne on YouTube responded, remember when we discussed the 2 wolves of the Native Americans' folklore? Mm-hmm. Whatever we feed the most, we become, whether it's good or bad.
Look at you, Laverne, just chopping it up and spitting some wisdom in here. I love it. Yeah, taking us back to the Toltec wisdom. I love that, Miss Laverne. The indigenous peoples of North America, bringing to us the wisdom of what we feed the most will be the strongest. That's great. And so think about it. Whether it is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, or the Toltec wisdom of the good wolf and bad wolf. Look at that comparison. They're not all that disparate in their application, are they? Love it, Laverne. Thanks for sharing.
Richard commented on number 1 as well. He said, my question is, who defines or determines what are the standards of right and wrong or morals?
I love that, Richard. Yeah. What is right and wrong? What is right in one culture may be wrong in another. Yeah. What is freedom to one may be bondage to another. You know, to project our sense of rightness onto others really is an egoic exercise in futility. And so in that framework, Jesus kind of simplifies it for us. He's like, look, you guys got all these 600 plus Levitical codes. I'm not dishonoring our Hasidic Jewish brethren and sistren. But in the simplification of spiritual practice, Jesus says, look, all that is wrapped up in this. Love God, love your neighbor as you love yourself. At Spirit and Truth, we know that that is a beautiful idea, but the order is backward. You cannot love God whom you haven't seen if you don't love your neighbor whom you have seen. You cannot love your neighbor if you don't love yourself. What can you give that you don't have? And so we must first learn to love ourselves, to see our own divine image and likeness. Then we can learn to recognize that Christ, Buddha nature in others and respect their journey. As we love our neighbors, we can then love God whom we have not seen but only experienced. And so that's great, Richard. I absolutely love that. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to kind of jump around and go in order here. We'll stick with number 1, and then Miss Bobby answered number 3. So we've got number 2. Who's going to take number 2? or we have plenty of time.
Read number 2 again so that they'll be fair.
And they're posted in your chat as well.
Yeah.
What is the higher order available to us in disorder? Maybe because that's a little harder. I mean, even
Come on, peoples, get in there and give it a try.
When I read that, I was thinking, okay, that's a little, yeah. Maybe I'll give my thought to that.
Okay.
But sticking with number 1, Lasagna posted, Aya Raw posted kind of a long comment, so I'm going to sort of paraphrase here and pick a little bit. But she said the tree's symbolism suggests that the emergence of the egoic mind is intrinsically tied to the moment when humanity gained the ability to distinguish between good and evil.
Wow.
The idea that this tree might transcend mere morality is a revelation in itself. Could it be that morality as we understand it is a construct that emerged after humanity's acquisition of knowledge and self-awareness?
Yeah.
Like morality didn't exist until we acquired the knowledge and self-awareness. It's very interesting.
That's great, Lasonia. Yeah, and I loved your terminology when we learned the difference in good and evil. I would even add to that, Lasonia, that we didn't learn it because it doesn't exist. We thought we knew good and evil. Listen to what Adam said to God. Adam, where are you? I hid myself. Why? Why are you hiding? I'm naked and ashamed. Who told you? Who told you that being naked is wrong? Who told you that you are naked, first of all, and who told you that this is supposed to be wrong? Why do you feel that way? I didn't create you wrong. Yeah, and so even the perception that they have some knowledge of good and evil is still up for debate in some circles, because Adam thought that being naked was wrong, and God said, I didn't tell you that. Yeah, that's amazing, Lasonia. I love that. Yeah, so the other applications can be vast. It can be in our personal journey of good and evil. Something happened to me as a child. Some teacher said something negative that made me question my self-worth. Some relationship that was either emotionally, physically, or abusive or neglectful in some ways, or tampered with my self-identity, my ability to trust, to be open, to experience love to the fullest. Is it? Or is it all part of the tapestry of the whole? As you were saying, Lasagna, it might all be working together, not just because we're called or appointed or we love God, but because that is the natural order that chaos in itself tends toward order. And I would say I would be the devil's advocate to the second law of thermodynamics that says systems left to themselves tend toward entropy or disorder. If you look at the system of nature or the circle of life, Lion King, You might think it looks chaotic, but it is happening in a beautiful order that we may not understand. Even think about even the brush fires that exist all over the world, horribly in Hawaii right now, happen many times in California. If you go to South Georgia, even the northern parts of Florida, you'll see as you're driving by huge, vast acres. And out of the ashes of that burning comes a beautiful new life that possibly needed to get rid of some things to make room of something new. The horrible application of that is that sometimes human lives are lost. Animals may be lost. But that if we look at that as chaotic or disorder, even though that sounds awfully detached from that, Lasonia, we can even say, wow, yeah, that's because we put so much stock into this specific human life. We're not able to step outside and see that we are eternal beings. Now, if my child or someone that we love gets caught in a fire and dies, of course it is traumatic. I'm certainly not making light of that in any way. The emotions that we feel with loss is very difficult. However, as we step out into our eternal minds, we know that this is just our middle passage. This is not one lifetime. It's just one unfoldment of our higher selves. And so that's a lot of philosophy, isn't it? That's great, Lasonia. Thank you.
All right, let's see. I'm going to jump back to Richard and then back to Bobby. So for number 2, what is the higher order available to us in disorder? Richard said it teaches or provides necessary, important lesson to be learned from an event or disruptive, disorderly experience that does not always lead to feelings of self-destruction.
Great. That's good. Richard, you took a stab. I love it. Look at this brave soul taking a stab at number 2. Come on, Richard. Richard threw the gauntlet down. He said, bring it, peoples. You bring it down. Yeah. Certainly that is one application, Richard, that there are lessons to learn from the chaos, from the disorder. The other lesson that I would add to that lesson is not to get overly attached to the lesson. I remember, Richard, my first car that I bought was a used police car. My dad and I bought it at an auction, and actually it was kind of donated to us from someone who owned a used car lot, who had seen my giving heart toward the church and wanted to bless me with something. So my blessing was an old police car that you could kind of still see the painting of the decals, and you could see where the cage was cut out of the back. My lights still flashed like a law enforcement vehicle. And I didn't particularly like the car. It was a Ford Crown Victoria, LTD Crown Victoria. I think it was a 1986, or maybe it was, I don't know, remember, whatever. So the engine had been kind of ragged out. Of course, it had been probably driven at high speeds, left cranked for hours on end. And so I began to form an opinion about all Ford cars. And I didn't want to drive a Ford any longer. I wanted to drive something that I perceived to be more reliable. So my next car was a different car, and I had problems with that car, and it had to be repaired. And the next car, yeah, guess what? All machines break down. And so that's just a simple way of saying the lesson wasn't that all Fords are bad. The lesson might have been all material things are impermanent. And so, yeah, so the lessons are good, but try not to get overly specific with the lessons. It may be about a culture, a person, dating, money, churches, whatever. Just make sure that we are aware of the lessons, but we don't become too overly attached to the lessons. I love the bravery, Richard. That was great.
All right, a couple more for number 2 coming in. I like this. Pastor Fred said, as I have evolved, disorder is the ability to question the validity of my beliefs.
Yeah, look at that impermanence, Frederick C. Hayes. I love that answer, Frederick. Yeah, and so yeah, the ability to question the beliefs is the order in that is the higher order in the chaos. Yeah, think about being raised with a rigid belief that God is this or that, and then that belief becomes challenged, and we either find ways to justify our paradigm or our construct of God, or we say, well, maybe God is bigger than any specific definition. We begin to challenge even the permanent nature of any belief, and we become open that we're not our beliefs. We are the Spirit's capable of having beliefs, but not married to any. That's great, Fred. I love it. A++. Larry Scott, 100 is not enough. Every day is Mother's Day. Frederick Hayes, thank you.
All right. Let's see. Richard put number 2, but this might actually be an answer to number 3, but it really kind of would fit either, honestly. He said, yes, learning to have a terminal, learning that you have a terminal illness, lost a loved one, or losing an important source of income or job. So I guess, talking about, is there higher order available, or is there a random event in your life that impacted the tapestry of the whole? So
that's really powerful, Richard. Maybe applies to both. I have had the good fortune, that's the wrong way to say that. I became a vibrational match with some wonderful, highly evolved souls that we realized we deserved each other. And one of those elevated, evolved, self-actualized souls is Carlton Pearson. And in your answer, Carlton was all over that, Richard. He is in a struggle with his physical body right now, and he seems to be somewhat detached from the outcome. He's happy to live, and he's at peace if this is the beginning of his transition. And that's a challenge for me, because my love is attached to his physical being here and being present. But as you said, Richard, even a physical illness can help us to tap into the higher order that all things are transitory and in transition. And so what an amazing answer. Thank you, Richard.
All right, Ms. Cheryl said for number 2, the higher order emerges from disorder. And I like this example. She said, this was my experience over the summer semester. Yet the disorder, that who knows what that disorder was during her
Right.
semester, but that disorder opened space for fostering transpersonal caring relationships among students and faculty.
Yeah, look at that. Whether it's technological challenges, COVID, my goodness, the economy, weather, it could be a multiplicity of things, Cheryl, of course. But yeah, even in the chaos, there is some sense of order that arises. Bishop Pearson said to me about 10 years ago, Cheryl, we had just bought our our property. We had just spent not just buying the property and taking out a mortgage. We took out a second mortgage of about $250,000 just because the property was dilapidated. We had all new carpet, all new everything, flooring, painting, ceilings, just everything had to be redone. And so as soon as we got all that done, Bishop Pearson said, D.E., the future of spiritual practice is going to be virtual. And I went, how dare you? Do you know what I've just gone through, both with the money we've spent and the personal sweat, blood equity that I've put into this thing? Yeah, but in that way, Cheryl, that prepared me for COVID. With the advent of COVID, we were a church who only knew the in-person connection, which I think is invaluable. We all need to be part of a spiritual community where we can see each other, hug each other, experience the vibration in each other's presence. However, most and many of our members now don't attend in person. They attend virtually. And although COVID was awful in some respects, it was wonderful in other respects. Yeah, and so it taught us to be malleable, to be flexible, to let go of our rigidity, and to know that spirituality doesn't happen in a specific boundary. It is open to change. And so whatever that semester looked like, Cheryl, there was a higher order coming out of it. Thank you.
I'll have to make sure and tell Esther that. And frankly, anybody who has students, tell them that some of the disorder they go through is going to provide or foster an opportunity for caring.
For the higher order,
yes.
yes.
Okay, so Miss Bobby for number 3. about, let's go back and read it. Is there a random event in your life? I like this perspective. She said, I suddenly looked in the mirror and saw a creative being and was quite happy with that. I am awake and choosing to be my authentic self and walking in my own truth.
Yeah, some random event can turn us within. And turning within means that, as you expressed, Bobby, that you're a creative being creating your life, that your peace is not at the mercy of external conditions, that your joy is not at the whims of world fads or shifts, or even the sifting of change. Yeah, that when we look in that mirror, we are a creative, created, and creating being who can manifest our outer world from our inner world. I love that, Bobby. Thank you.
All right, Jason said, I guess an experience or what happened to us is neither good or bad. I give meaning to what happened with my thoughts about it. Sometimes that's easier said than done, right? The quote of, it's not what happened to us, but what we think about what happened to us.
Yeah.
But Jason, that made me want to go back and reread that last line again, which I just loved. The last paragraph said, the cosmos is not chaotic.
Yeah.
In fact, the very word cosmos means order. But this is not an order the human mind can even comprehend. Wow. Although we sometimes get a glimpse of it. So I think about the vastness of the cosmos. We get a glimpse. We think our universe, our solar system is in order because we have a sun in the middle. The planets rotate around it. That seems very orderly, right? But just outside of that, there's a lot of quote unquote what we view as chaos. But that statement, Tolle is kind of challenging us, saying, "But wait, the cosmos is not chaotic. It's actually very orderly. It's just too hard for us to comprehend it." So I think, Jason, to your comment,
good stuff.
Like with the experience, what's happening to us, we can, if we really try, we can maybe glimpse some of the order that's going on around us. But unfortunately, we just can't comprehend that it's all happening for a reason or whatever you want to say about it. So I really liked that comment, Jason.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason. Wonderful, wonderful. So is that Jason Jacobs?
Yes.
From New York?
Jacob,
sorry. And from where?
Yeah, he's from New York.
From New York. What's up, New York? Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I love that phrase too, Jason. The cosmos means order. So think about what Brandy was saying. It seems that our little solar system is fairly orderly. However, our sun is going to burn out at some point. Then what will the order be? What will our learned behaviors of photosynthesis and energy and osmosis and all that? Yeah, it's the greenhouse. What will all that mean? I don't know. Think about this, Jason, that it may seem that we are living in an orderly solar system. What about the black holes or the wormholes that exist in the galaxy, where time doesn't exist, or even other planets are sucked into something that then implodes and then reorders itself? That would seem chaotic. Some sort of big bang, or what is it? When the world was, we were once connected to Australia, and what do they call that? Before the continents divided, I forget what it's called. Somebody may be smarter than me that remembers it. But it may seem chaotic, plate tectonics or earthquakes, or is it all just random, or is there some order in the chaos? Yeah, and so in that framework, whether we, for generations and millennia, have worshipped the sun, we are all sun worshipers, and Sunday, moon day, Monday, yeah. How do we allow our minds a bigger space than we are even bigger than our solar system? We're bigger than some perceived order of orbiting or gravity, that it is all part of the tapestry of the whole. Even what we see as chaotic or planets banging around, it does work towards some sense of order. Isn't that amazing? That's a big thought there. Wow, thank you, Jason.
All right, I know we're getting close to time here. Just give us a little extra since we started a few minutes late. But before we started tonight, D.E. said, I don't know how I'm going to get all this in tonight is a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, so Cheryl, I really liked this view of number 3, which was, is there a random event in your life that impacted the tapestry of the whole? Quote, tapestry of the whole, and that idea. And I'm sure we could all start telling stories of random events that we know changed our lives. There's more comments as well this evening. But she said, I am aware that all of humanity is or are interconnected. Therefore, I recognize that my actions impact others and others' actions impact me. There is no separation.
Yeah, that's a Thich Nhat Hanh interbeing, Cheryl, that you're referring to. It is all interconnected. Stevie Wonder refers to this in Higher Ground, talking about the reincarnative nature of the reality of life. Lenny Kravitz refers to this in the song Believe. I think it's on his second album. It says, I am you and you are me. Why is that such a mystery? Yeah. Thich Nhat Hanh says that we interbe with all that exists. I am you, you are me, the flower, the sun. Where do we even get bread from? Well, the sun bakes this and it turns into a certain plant and so when you see a flower or a loaf of bread, you're not just seeing a flower, you're seeing the whole cosmos in that one flower. Dr. King enjoined us, Cheryl, to remember that before we even leave our house in the morning, we are connected to the entire world. The coffee we drink, it may come from South America. The sponge we use at our table may come from some Caribbean island. That the bread we eat may come from an Englishman. Yeah, all of these ideas. The meat or bacon that we eat comes from a farmer. Wow. Yeah, it's we are connected to the world before we even leave our houses in the morning. And so Dr. King says we are all trapped in an inescapable network of mutuality. What affects one directly affects all indirectly. That's the context for the quote, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. That's a Kingian sermon that is coming to through a lot of context right there. That's really beautiful, Cheryl. Thank you for that.
Okay, so a couple other things to kind of round it out. There's more comments that we missed this evening. Sorry, everyone. But Miss Jeannie, to number 3, said the
Jeannie
mental...
Lovingood?
Yes.
Hey, Jeannie Lovingood.
The mental labels of good and bad are ultimately illusory. However, when you go through the humanity part, it's not always easy. So my mantra now is all things work for good, which is kind of what we've talked about a little bit.
That's beautiful, Jeannie.
And then I wanted to just share kind of some other random comments or questions tonight. And one of them is not funny, but in a way it kind of is. David Loftus said, how long would it take to overpopulate the earth if people stopped dying?
David Loftus, the tapestry of the whole. There it is. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, if you think of it, though, if everyone immediately stopped dying starting at this moment, it would not take very long for all of our natural resources to run out, and then we would just all die anyway.
Wow, David. That's pretty amazing. I would add to that. So I'm not trying to one-up you, David, because that was fabulous. But, yeah, I've never had an issue with birth control. I think anything that gets traffic moving faster. Less people on the earth, less food shortages, less global warming. I am all about that, David. That's a great perspective.
Okay, so another good one here. Richard said, perhaps time was created so everything does not happen all at once.
The illusion of time. Yeah, that which was has already been, that which will be is just a repeating. Yeah, that's Ecclesiastes chapter 3. That's great. Thank you.
Okay, and last but not least, funny enough.
Look at all these wonderful comments. I love it.
These are just some of the kind of like funny nuggets that I don't normally end up reading.
It's a morsel. It's a nugget, Brandon. You just said, LaDonna, your sister-in-law just said nugget.
I did that for her because I am transitioning to one of her comments here.
I like it, yeah.
Both LaDonna and Lasagna, in response to what you were saying a few minutes ago, wrote Pangea.
Pangea, thank you. Panspermia. Pangea, yes, before the continental divide. Thank you, my smart Lasonia and P. Turkey, LaDonna, Paulk Diaz. Thank you guys so much. All right, is that all, those most of the
That's
comments?
it for
Thank
me.
you guys. What a wonderful discussion tonight. We missed having our discussion with you. I do have a couple of just quick announcements. Looking forward to seeing everybody Friday morning with our 7 a.m. devotion. And then, of course, Sunday morning for in-person and virtual, 10 a.m. Sunday worship service. And an exciting announcement, Wednesday, September the 6th. So I believe it is 2 weeks from tonight. We're going to, after the teaching, so about 7:30 or so, we're going to have a cooking show. September the 6th is a Wednesday night. We're going to have a cooking. I've had so many requests recently. When are you going to do the cooking show again? And I said, well, hopefully we'll do it this New Year's Eve again. But they're like, we don't want to wait till January. So we'll do it occasionally, maybe on a Wednesday night. We'll have the ingredients sent out to you by email. They'll also be in the bulletin if you come to church in person. But we'll have some fun a couple of weeks from tonight after we finish our discussion. We'll go into the kitchen and have a little cooking show together. And so look forward to that. All right, I'm going to give some shout out to some beautiful. I know we're past time, so if you need to click off, please always use your own agency with your own time. Pastor Fred and Mary, Sheila, Callie, Doreen, Taria, Irma, Sandra. Hey, Sandy Mac. Esther Folks, Glenna, Donald, Dinah, and Brandon, Patricia, Pat Hutchinson, Miss Myrna, Lenora, Tanya, Oprah Winfrey, Dr. Ray to the Madison, Jason, Ivy, and Margie, Pastor Don, hey Dad, Ben and Vicky, call Ben up and tell him what you want. Ben Mullins, I of Ra, hey LaSonia, Josephine, Maud, Jeannie, Kat Bell, Pastor LaDonna, hey LaDonna, Ethel, Reverend David, Michael, Gloria, Bobby, more Pastor Gloria and Howard, Cheryl, Terry, Richard, and Laverne, and Naila. Thank you so much for being a part tonight. We love you guys. Looking forward to seeing you again on a Friday morning and then Sunday morning. Let's read our closing affirmation together tonight. Tonight, I am willing to recognize dysfunction. If suffering is the normal state of humanity, I do not wish to be normal. If I've created God in my image, I will surrender to the truth that I'm created in God's image. I'm neither an external physical form nor any internal thought form. I am a spiritual being capable of experiencing physical form and the observing presence, open to considering a diversity of thoughts. My present thoughts, do not reflect my eternal capacity. My potential for awakening to self and spiritual transformation are endless. In your face, people. I love you guys. Have a great rest of your week. Go in peace. May God bless.